Hi. Okay, so we're going to look at consumer behavior. Sorry, I just moved this around. We're looking at chapter 7, so I think I may have put a recording already online about this, but the sound was problematic. So hopefully this one will go off okay. So this is the consumer decision processes we're going to look at, and obviously we're going to go in deeper than you would have covered in first year and so on. So for this class, we want to identify levels of consumer decision making, describe stages in the consumer decision making process, so that should be familiar, discuss the models of consumer decision making, and then recognize an impulse purchase situation, and finally explain relationship marketing. So consumer decision making encompasses all the processes that consumers go through in recognizing problems, searching for solutions, and choosing among purchase options. The consumer decision process generally begins when the consumer identifies a consumption problem that needs to be solved. I need a new mobile, I'd like a new car, I just spilled bolognese on my laptop and I need a new one for all those CAs that I'm doing over the next few weeks. So a consumer purchase, therefore, is a response to the problem. Problem recognition, then, is that perceived difference between the ideal state and the actual state. Once a problem has been recognized, the consumer needs adequate information to solve it. Bringing them to the next step. So information search is the process by which the consumer surveys their environment for appropriate data to make a reasonable decision. Typically, the next step is internal search. Each consumer has stored in their memory a range of information, feelings, past experiences that can all be recalled when making that decision, because consumers have a limited capacity or ability to process information, and because memory traces can decline over time, consumers are likely to recall only a small subset of stored information when they engage in that internal search. So they're just wondering, oh, what brands do I know off the top of my head, and so on. So generally, consumers recall 4 types of information. So brands, number 1 for a reason. A lot of work has gone into making them easy to remember and simple. Number 2 is attributes. 3 is evaluations, and 4 is experiences. So, the set of brands that consumers recall from memory whenever a problem recognition has been stimulated is an important aspect of internal search that greatly affects decision making. Obviously, if it's something that they're already thinking about, that's the most likely one that will go in the basket, even if in the supermarket there are tons and tons of choices. Excuse me. Rather than remembering all available brands in any given situation, consumers tend to recall a subset of 2 to 8 brands, known as the consideration set or evoked set. In general, the consideration set consists of brands that you think of off the top of your head. They're easy to remember when making that decision. Many people tend to buy the same brand every time they go to the supermarket. This consistent pattern is often due to inertia, so that's momentum. When a ball rolling down the hill, it's much easier for that ball to just continue rolling. It takes energy to stop that ball from rolling, so that's what inertia is, that once the rolling ball is moving and there is a little bit of a slope, it'll keep rolling. So if you have a habit of just buying that particular product, you will keep buying it unless something gets in the way. So this consistent pattern is often due to inertia, as a brand is bought out of habit merely because less effort is required. They don't have to think about it. So we'll read a couple of these. I know I usually tell you to pause the recording and read them yourself, but let's just see what these are. So Extravision. Excuse me. Extravision has been operating in Ireland for more than 20 years. Obviously, this clipping has been taken from a story 15 years ago, thereabouts. I think Extravision now has evolved into Netflix, one of those formerly video companies turned into Netflix, basically, through a couple of evolutions. Today, Extravision, obviously at the time, is owned by Blockbuster Inc. and Viacom, one of the world's largest entertainment and media companies. When Blockbuster acquired Extravision, it retained the Extravision name due to its strong brand recognition in the Irish marketplace. When Extravision started business in Ireland, it operated in the video rental market, concentrating on VHS videos and a limited product portfolio. If Extravision had continued to perceive its market as the narrow video rental market, it would have failed to take advantage of the broader opportunities evolving in the home entertainment industry, and thus would have fallen foul of what is termed marketing myopia. That narrow vision and not seeing the big picture of what's going on in the world. Today, Extravision has the largest share of the home entertainment market in Ireland due to its successful adaptation to market trends. Extravision has experienced rapid growth and diversification. The home entertainment market in Ireland is changing and developing. Extravision has grown from a movie rental company to a home entertainment company, providing movies and games to buy, phones, and a broad range of electronics products. The core objective of Extravision's market strategy, excuse me, is to make the company the one-stop shop for all entertainment needs. The Irish market is strong, with average rentals per month twice that of the UK. The continued development of the Extravision brand, signified by its familiar yellow and red logo, is a core component of Extravision's marketing strategy. The Extravision brand has 97% recognition in the Irish marketplace, and regular market research is carried out to measure brand recall, recognition, so brand recognition, and general attributes attached to the Extravision brand. So they are trying to keep up with trends. They are trying to understand their customers and know what's going on in the marketplace with their customers. Excuse me. The Extravision brand is promoted through effective communication by advertising, promotion, and through its website. The overall brand name and image is continuously strengthened by the company's commitment to customer service and guaranteed quality. And, and that was further evidenced in their continuing to do research and continuing to evolve, as I say, as far as I know, that they went through a couple of evolutions. They ended up closing all their stores at one point, still in the DVD rental business, and they used to post them to people. And then obviously they moved into the streaming and nailed it completely around the world, the streaming service, and ultimately the name became Netflix. So recall of attributes, one of the things mentioned in that article. Consumers access only a small portion of the information stored in memory during internal search. Often consumers cannot remember specific facts about a product or service because personal memory of details decreases over time. Nevertheless, consumers can often recall some details when they engage in internal search, and the recalled attribute information can strongly influence the brand choices. Excuse me. Some of the variables which influence the recall of attribute information in that information search phase and in the decision-making process include, So information that's more accessible or available is the most likely to be recalled and can be entered into the decision making process. Marketers can make information more accessible by repeatedly drawing attention to it in marcoms or by making the information more relevant. So that means more relevant to their consumers, that group of consumers. This helps consumers distinguish objects from one another. If all brands of mobiles were the same price, the price would not be diagnostic in making the decision. Interestingly, negative information tends to be more diagnostic than information that's positive or neutral. You know, if one of your friends tells you, oh, that brand is crap, then you are likely to respond to that, whereas you're more likely to respond by not buying that product. Whereas if one person tells you one particular brand that you've never heard of is good, you know, you're not that likely. You'll need more reinforcement before you actually take the plunge and buy it. In addition, marketers can identify which attributes tend to be more diagnostic for a particular product or service category and try and gain competitive advantage on one or more of these attributes. So if we know what these attributes are, well, firstly, we can enhance them. We can make sure if we're redesigning that product that we enhance those attributes, but also that we use the information about those attributes in our communications. We draw people's attention to them. That's our best foot to put forward. And that's what we're trying to do in understanding our customers and understanding how we communicate to our customers about our product. If they want to know about this particular attribute and we figure that out through our research, that's the attribute we talk about when we're looking for something to talk about. So again, another little case study, a little mini story, putting a context on some of the theory here. So built to last, the value of conviction, consistency, and long-term strategy in brand building. So everyone has seen Barry's Tea before and knows what it is. Brands give businesses a competitive edge. They create profit and must be taken seriously in the boardroom if companies want to succeed. Patrick Rigney, chairman of the Board BIA Brand Forum, suggested that in an increasingly competitive environment, brands are the wealth generators and critical for success. Branding is a way of doing business that involves mental strength, passion, and conviction. In order to succeed, you and your team have to be clear about where the company is going and deliver on that work plan. Greg Butler, Financial and Marketing Director of Barry's Tea, believes that quality combined with the Irish emotional attachment to tea and tea drinking, so that the social aspect of tea drinking, has kept us successful. We have consistently used golden moments to communicate in a way that Irish consumers can relate to. He added that consumer loyalty to Irish tea, and in particular Barry's Tea, was so strong that Lipton, the world's largest tea brand, was unable to penetrate the market here when Lipton was introduced in Ireland in the 1990s. Quality has been at the centre of Barry's Tea since the foundation in 1901. It held 14% of the national tea market before it changed its business model from retail to wholesale. Today, Barry's Tea accounts for 37% of all tea sales in Ireland and has an annual turnover of 31 million euros. The company began advertising only in 1985. So they had 84 years of being in business where they were not doing any advertising, which is remarkable, but shows the changing times. That's just not possible anymore. So presumably the numbers, the euro amounts would be a lot larger today as well if we were to do a survey. Or maybe not, maybe the other tea. Some of you are working on tea, artisan tea, maybe they're eroding some of the market share. So recall of experiences is another element. Internal search can involve a recall of experiences. So your experience with the brand, the consumer's experience with the brand. Bought it before, didn't like it. Bought it before, loved it. Bought it before, meh. So internal search can involve recall of experiences in the form of specific images and the effect associated with them. If a consumer had an experience with a product or service that is either unusually positive or unusually negative, he or she is likely to recall. It's stored in their vivid experiences. Furthermore, if a customer repeatedly has positive experience with a product or service, it will be easier to recall these experiences through that product or service. So then moving on to external search, searching for information from the environment, anything outside myself. For either pre-purchase or ongoing search, consumers can acquire information from 5 categories of external sources. So one is retailer search, visits or calls to shops or dealers, including examination of package. So in a very low involvement purchase, you just look at what's available in the aisle. Media search is information from advertising or online, excuse me, manufacturer sponsored websites, other manufacturer produced comms. Number 3, interpersonal search, advice from friends or family, neighbors, other groups, including online as well. So social media interactions. Number 4, independent search, contact with independent sources of information, such as books, government sites, or other information sites. So looking up which look for independent reviews and assessments of products and so on. Finally, number 5 is the experiential search. So use of samples. You got a free sample, a sachet of shampoo. You're willing to give it a go. If you like it, you might buy it. So product or service trials, test drive a car, for example. You don't have to buy the car before you drive it. You drive it and then decide if you want to buy it. Or experiencing a product online. So obviously digital marketing is a huge part of any campaigns these days, and a huge part of consumers' activity in their information search. But yeah, so it's dramatically altered the way consumers shop and search for information without ever having to leave your home or where you are, wherever you are at that moment in time. Consumers can have access to almost any type of information they need to make their purchase decisions. Consumers can now use the internet to access information from all 5 in the list above. And sometimes consumers search for specific information, and other times they browse or just accidentally come upon it. The brand name is the most frequently accessed type of information because it's a central node. So in the brain, you have things like the memories are sometimes linked to each other, and the way that they're linked is through a central node. So the center of a wheel, and sometimes like the connections can come out like a spoke, and there'll be other nodes then if there's other connections going on. So the brand name provides access to all those other bits of information. And that's why it's so powerful. When consumers know the brand name, they can immediately activate the other relevant nodes. They start firing as well. It's like a little pulse of electricity, and it's infectious. It goes from one to the other and it kind of cascades around the nearby nodes. Literally, they are physically nearby to each other. Okay, so another little story. In 2006, McVitie's set about invigorating the special treats segment of the biscuit market with the launch of a new sub-brand, McVitie's Moments. The launch of McVitie's Moments saw the brand entering the special treats biscuit segment, currently growing. The whole segment is growing by over 16.5% year on year in value terms, so in money being spent in this category. As a brand, McVitie's has the scale to unlock the opportunity within the special treats sector, which currently attracts 56% of the Irish population. With Moments, McVitie's leveraged the heritage of the McVitie's brand to accelerate its growth in this sector and supported this through investment in store, while a heavyweight marketing campaign, sorry, this is a snipping taken from the book, so it's got a typo there. So while also conducting a heavyweight marketing campaign, including television. Okay, so price. Consumers search for price information because they use that to decide about other attributes such as quality and value and so on. Other attributes that may come up after searching for the brand name and the price. Consumers search for additional information depending on which attributes are important to them. And that would obviously vary from person to person and type of product to type of product. So when we talk about customers, there are two categories, as you know, from last year, a couple of different modules. Private consumers, so we're usually talking about consumer products when we're in marketing, and they are anything that is sold for personal or household use, and so the people purchasing those are private consumers, purchasing and using. They're private customers, private consumers. And the other type then in blue, we have organizational customers, and so the types of purchase occasions they have or reasons for purchase are for use in the operation of that business or organization, or to manufacture, so something to put into a product, so it's either raw materials or components that will become part of a finished product, or something to resell onwards. So if they are a wholesaler company or a retailer, they are buying in goods, they're breaking it down into smaller denominations and selling that on usually. So we have a decision-making process for organizations as well. And as you know, there's 7 steps in that. Recognition of problems, similar to the first of the consumer decision-making process. Determination of spec and quantity of needed items, so it gets a little more technical when it's an organization. Search for and qualification of potential sources. And then acquisition and analysis of proposals. So this is the replacing the information search. And then evaluation of proposals and selection of supplier, selection of order routine, and performance feedback and evaluation. So obviously that final step is similar in the consumer process. So consumer process then, more simply, problem recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase decision and occasion as well. The transaction happens in number 4, and post-purchase behavior or decision sometimes. Was that a good idea? Will I buy that again? Am I happy? So on. So problem recognition in more detail. Consumers recognize that they have a need for something. One goal of advertising is to cause consumers to recognize a problem. So I've talked before about Coca-Cola's marketing campaigns and some of their ads. They are trying to stimulate thirst. So you've got a medley of people opening the cans and bottles and taking that first gasp of the drink. So it's a medley of these noises, you know, that gasp after that first mouthful sort of thing. And they're trying to stimulate thirst, and hopefully if you're thirsty, you might buy a Coke. So an organization marketing activities are a direct attempt to reach, inform, and persuade consumers to buy and use their products. If the need is sufficiently strong, it may motivate the person to move on to the next stage. Because at any point in these 5 steps, the consumers may abandon and not complete the purchase. So the next stage, information search, can be either extensive or limited, depending on the involvement. I mean, if we don't really care what brand we buy, it's insignificant, there's not much risk, it's, they're all quite cheap, we're not going to spend days deciding which chewing gum to buy. So the degree of perceived risk can influence the decision, this stage of the decision process. Number of factors likely to increase the search for information are product factors, if they're very complicated, situational factors, why are we buying it and what's the moment in time? Is it the middle of the night and we need nappies and, we'll take whatever we can find? Or are we, planning to buy in bulk, or maybe it's a new couple expecting their first baby and the baby hasn't arrived yet, but they're doing all the research and they're figuring out which brand of nappies they're going to start buying or whatever. So situational factors can be very important. Demographic characteristics of the customer, social acceptability, and value-related considerations. So all of those elements come into that second stage. It's the gathering of information. And then the next is where you weigh up the information. You've got the information, now you want to evaluate. So evaluate it, there's an element of judgment. So we are narrowing down the alternatives based on judging certain characteristics or whatever. So includes the formation of attitudes. So you can look back and revise chapter 6 topic if you want more on that. The criteria customers use to evaluate alternative products are usually expressed in terms of important product attributes. So we've just mentioned that earlier. When a company knows that consumers will be evaluating alternatives, it sometimes advertises in a way that recommends the criteria that customers should use in assessing products or service options. So it's kind of leading them to say, well, compare us on this and, we'll come out on top. Then the 4th stage is the decision. Decision is made. Choice is the 4th stage in the process. At this stage, consumers decide which action to select. So if they're making the purchase, they may just try it, give it a go, see how it goes, trial purchase. Repeat purchases. So perhaps they've flown through stages 2 and 3 because, they tend to just stick with the same few brands, and whichever one of those is perhaps on offer, they'll buy that. They know about it, they're used to it. It's not going to take up much brain power to buy shampoo. And then a 3rd type of purchase could be a long-term commitment purchase. It could be either in choosing an overall brand to keep using. So some people use eco nappies and do a lot of research to see how are they made, what kind of chemicals. And so it's, even though it's a consumable that they will be using all the time, it's a long-term commitment. They're doing this research to know which brand to continue to use. Or it could be a product that is around for a long time. So your car, you're not going to be buying a new car every month. It's a long-term commitment. You're hoping to keep that car. Obviously, the car would have a lifetime of at least 20 years or so, but individuals are making a commitment to own the car for at least a few years usually, and then sell it on, hopefully. Or a washing machine or white goods in the house. It's a long-term commitment. They're hoping they will last a number of years. And so it's worth putting the time and effort into thinking about it. And then the final element, post-purchase behavior. Consumers consume or use the product or service. They also evaluate the outcomes of the consequences of their behavior and engage in the ultimate disposal of the waste resulting from the purchase. So it's maybe only after they've used it that they realize that actually it's not recyclable at all. And that might have an impact on whether or not they buy it next time again or not. As consumers use a product, they evaluate its performance in light of their own expectations. So when they're comparing the actual with the expectation, there's three outcomes possible. The first possibility is neutral. You know, it meets expectation. They expected it to, you know, do A, B, and C, and it actually does A, B, and C exactly as expected. So that's neutral. That's pretty okay. That's a brand that, you know, will still get bought. Number two is that performance exceeds expectations, so you get satisfaction or even delight, depending on how far it exceeds expectations. And obviously, that's really positive for a brand. That's even strong. It's a strong endorsement, making it highly likely that that brand will continue to be purchased in the future. And then the third option is performance is less than, is below expectations. We expected bells and whistles, we got average, and therefore dissatisfied. Maybe we are regretting the purchase, perhaps thinking we should have bought product Y instead of product X, and so on. And this results in a very low likelihood of purchasing that product. If the consumer remembers, does it matter that much? The more it matters, the more they will remember. So the degree of post-purchase analysis that consumers undertake at this stage depends on the importance of that product decision and the experience acquired in using the product. So moving on then to models of consumer decision-making. From the 1970s, researchers began to question the concept that all consumer purchases result from careful analytical process, you know, diligently going through the steps. Some suggested that in many instances, consumers don't engage in any deliberate decision-making at all prior to making the purchase. Given the limitations of the traditional consumer decision process, researchers have proposed alternative decision-making models that place different emphases on each stage of the stages identified above. So we have four well-known models of consumer decision-making that have followed this time. And they explain how and why individuals behave as they do. So we're going to look at them, each one in just a nutshell, I guess. So they are four well-known models of consumer decision-making to explain how and why individuals behave as they do. Number one is economic man theory. Portrays the consumer as rational, making rational decisions and so on. You know, carefully considering the information and then making a logical decision. Number two, and you can imagine, especially with the word man in it, that this is one of the older theories. Passive model then is the opposite of the rational economic model and depicts consumers as basically submissive to the interests and promotional efforts of marketers. Consumers are perceived as impulsive and irrational purchasers. They're not gathering information actively. They're maybe if they're looking at advertisements, they're not really paying attention, but something is going in there and it's happening in the subconscious. And when they make a purchase decision, then it's something that's triggered in the subconscious that makes them throw something in the basket. The third one is the cognitive model. So it's coming out of the first one, but taking it, you know, into more of an extreme, portrays the consumer as a thinking problem solver. Consumers are frequently pictured as either receptive to or actively searching for products and services that fulfill their needs and enrich their lives, and focuses on the processes by which consumers seek and evaluate information about selected brands and retail outlets. So they're looking for information, they want the details, and they want to analyze those details carefully. So cognitive refers to all those processes going on in the mind, and the mind is working hard on this. And then the final one is the emotional model. Consumers are likely to associate deep feelings and emotions such as joy, fear, love, hope, fantasy, and maybe even magic, depending on what it is. Certain purchases or certain purchase occasions. Consumers are likely to make many purchases on impulse, on a whim, because they're emotionally driven. They see something, it triggers some emotion, and they think, yeah, I'll buy that one. Ignore all the logical information. You know, on balance, these other ones have better functionality, but I like this one. I like it. I don't know why. I want it. That's the emotional model. Now, the reality is that we as consumers and the consumers in the wider world, if we're looking as with our marketing hat on, depending on the type of product, we can follow any one of those four. And in fact, we follow all four, but at different times. It may be in different situations and for different product classes, you know, especially, you know, if we don't really, if it's low involvement, yeah, why not have a passive model? I don't give a beep what spray cleaner I use in the bathroom, or whatever. I just know I need one. So yeah, whatever, throw it in the basket. I do not want to follow the cognitive model. I am not going to start reading a load of ingredients and reading reviews online and asking my friends. No way. It's not that important. Happy to follow the passive model. Emotional model, well, are we not emotional? When we're buying a gift for somebody, is that not emotion? You know, so there are lots of different circumstances and lots of different types of product that will, you know, naturally will fall into one of the four at different times. And it's perfectly okay. But as marketers, we want to know which one is likely for our product and for our target market, perhaps, or the different target markets. What's going on in each of them. So another little story here. Putting context on some theory. Excuse me. So subtlety is the key to unlocking brand power. Have you ever had the experience of returning from a day of shopping with something you hadn't planned to buy? If you didn't really want it or need it, have you ever wondered why did you buy it? This illustrates brand power, otherwise referred to as impulse purchasing. Marketing teams all over the world develop and exploit this capability of a brand regularly to ensure they reach their sales targets. Marketing teams are generally so sure that we'll fall prey to our impulses that entire marketing strategies are often devised around building brand power to ensure impulse purchasing behavior. Marketing teams develop a brand that people want to own and be associated with, and as a result, they happily purchase these brands because they believe the product being purchased will improve their lives. Typically, a person sees an average of 4,000 marketing messages every day. I mean, that number changes all the time, depending on which studies you look at, but it's always agreed to be in the thousands, all promoting products and brand images. We are also constantly bombarded with subliminal branding messages through a variety of means which aim to reinforce the image we have of these products. But what is it that makes that particular brand appeal to us? A brand utilizes a variety of means to relate to potential customers on a personal level, and brand managers will endeavor to portray a desirable image that people will aspire to. Whether it's sex appeal, health, luxury, indulgence, a powerful brand can subconsciously trigger an emotional reaction in the potential purchaser. This is often enough to tempt a customer. Shopping as a brand experience in Ireland has changed dramatically over the past 20 years. In the 1980s, individuals had less disposable cash and were more price sensitive than brand aware. In those days, the hard sales approach, including bright neon signs and pushy salespeople, was used to encourage consumers to buy. Today, however, people are more cash rich, and they want a more subtle approach when it comes to shopping. They prefer the soft sell and less is more approach from brands. So, you might say that social media sometimes is that softer approach. Subtlety is favored. For example, Raymond Wheel watch speaks volumes but is not brash or ostentatious. In an increasingly image-conscious Ireland, customers have become captivated with designer brands, reflecting how we feel about ourselves and the lifestyle we want to project to our friends, family, and environment. Male consumers think nothing of splashing out on a suit from Louis Copeland or Burberry cufflinks, while women choose Jimmy Choo shoes and Hermes bags as if they were a necessity. It's also important to point out, however, that customers do not, sheep-like, blindly follow crowd trends. Consumers are now increasingly aware of, but more resilient to brands. So brand managers have in turn responded to this and developed newer, more creative, more important and less obvious ways to capture our interest. So the final topic here, I think, is relationship marketing. So many organizations have established relationship marketing programs, loyalty programs they're also called, to foster usage, loyalty, and commitment to their product. So obviously, what comes to mind immediately, and the ones to start doing it to most effect, were the supermarkets. Tesco in particular started the ball rolling with the club card, and all the other supermarkets, and then the coffee shops and so on followed suit, and a lot of companies have something of that nature now. So the aim of relationship marketing is to create strong, lasting relationships with a core group of consumers. The emphasis is on developing long-term bonds with consumers by making them feel good about how the company interacts or does business with them, and by giving them some kind of personal connection to the business. So they build up points, you get some little gifts with coffee shops. Sometimes you get a free muffin or a free coffee. After, a certain number of points or a certain number of coffees or whatever it is. So database marketing involves tracking consumers' buying habits very closely and crafting products and messages tailored precisely to people's wants and needs based on that information. So again, the Tesco Club Card is the classic. It's basically every customer is its own segment, and there are unique offers going out to each individual customer based on their own buying habits and so on. Sometimes it's that the algorithm has noticed that they used to buy a lot of product X and no longer buy it, or maybe it's trying to get them, well, we know you buy this brand of that type of product. Well, here, why don't you try this other brand of different product within that product category? And so it's very directed. It's either rewarding them for buying particular products or sometimes getting them to try new, maybe it's more expensive one, but on this occasion it'll be cheaper with this extra token. So that's, really using their database to good effect. So it is a subset. So a subset of database marketing is permission marketing, and essentially all database marketing these days is permission marketing. So it's considered unethical not to be within this category. The art of asking customers if they would like to receive. So it's tick those boxes if you want to be contacted by us. Emails, promotion, or message before they receive it, so they know it's coming. And they've agreed to it, and sometimes they want it. See what's out there. If it's the type of products you like looking at, and you know, then maybe you want those emails. So relationship marketing programs have been used in a variety of products, product or service categories. Many organizations call their relationship program a club, and some even charge a fee to join. It sort of gives that extra element of exclusivity, something that's worth being part of, and so on, even though it may just be a nominal amount. Membership of a club may serve as a means of conveying to customers notions of permanence and exclusivity in a committed relationship. So getting them to hand over money and information is you're getting the customer to invest in this relationship, and therefore they want to make that relationship worthwhile. So they will, you know, follow that with their time and their custom. You know, they will come and spend money, hopefully, and frequent whatever it is your type of business is. Ultimately, it's the organization's advantage to develop long-term, as we're always saying, long-term relationships with existing customers, because it's always, no matter what business you're in, it's always easier and less expensive to make an additional sale to an already existing customer than to make a new sale to a totally new customer. And so we're always working in that arena. So why is relationship marketing so important? Research indicates that consumers today are less loyal than in the past due to 6 main forces: an abundance of choice, availability of information, entitlement. Consumers repeatedly ask, what have you done for me lately? So if they don't feel that that is a positive answer, they'll move on. Try the next brand. Commoditization. Many products or services appear to be similar, and therefore nothing stands out. And therefore they don't care which one, and they'll keep changing their mind. Insecurity. Consumer financial problems reduce loyalty. As I've mentioned before, about 80% of all cheese sold all year round is sold on whatever's on offer in the shop. People are very disloyal to cheese. Just one type of product. Time scarcity is another thing. Not enough time to be loyal. We're not doing any research. We're not looking around. If we don't see the one, we don't have time to think about it. We're just throwing it in. So the above 6 forces result in consumer defections, complaints, cynicism, reduced affiliation, and greater price sensitivity. So the cheese example. Consequently, successful relationship programs that retain consumers are a central part of a company's marketing program. So you can read the longer case studies on the PDFs on the Moodle page. And the final slide, as always, is potential exam questions. So you should practice these, go through each one. Some of them are on past papers, some of them are taken from the book. All of them are potentials for the exam, and pretty much all topics in this module are potentially on the paper, either as an A or B question and so on. So don't try and be strategic about leaving out topics and only focusing on certain topics, because really you on the paper you have to do 2 out of 3 questions in the section B. Question 1 in section A is compulsory, so you really can only leave out 1 question on the paper, and therefore, you know, you can only really afford If you really hate one of the chapters in the book, one of the topics, then maybe perhaps leave out just one, but ideally go through the questions on each one and practice. And the paper is designed to reward people who know their stuff and have done their work. So this is the work. Take a question and go back, you know, after looking at the videos or looking at the, you know, take a topic, rewatch the video, then see if you can answer the questions. Have the notes open, have a look. And hopefully as you go through the questions, maybe you're going to be less likely to need to go back to the notes, or maybe you find a particular information very quickly and be able to add to it perhaps from your own, but write out your perfect answer. Handwrite it out, don't write out bullet points, express yourself in full sentences and paragraphs. What you write for these questions will be then your study notes for the exam the night before and the morning before, and hopefully you'll have a whole folder full or a copy or a notebook full, and that will be in your own handwriting, and you will have practiced expressing yourself in the way you need to express yourself in the exam. If you just write out bullet points, it will be hard for you when your brain is not at its best and it's a high pressure situation, and suddenly you can't put a sentence together on the day. So just practice expressing yourself in the way you need to express yourself in the exam. Write the full answer out, write full sentences, expand into paragraphs, add the waffle. The exam is the time to waffle. CAs are not the time to waffle. It's, you know, it's about staying within the word count. It's a different task in the exam. Restate it different ways to really show you understand it. Even if you think you're a little bit repetitive, you might get another half point here or 1 point there. For showing that extra understanding or something. Show it in a different context, give an example. And that's how you clock up, you know, all those, as I said, mark here and a mark there. By the time you're done, you know, could be an extra grade in the difference. Anyway, that's another topic done, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.